Thanks, Richard. Thanks for that. Thanks for the introduction. I'm talking to you on a very specific topic. So it's fire regularizations or fire safety certificate regularizations. Okay, and how inspections are very important and part of those. Now I'm talking to you from the viewpoint of how we do things in Fingal. There's 31 local authorities in the country. We all do things a little bit differently. So I'm hoping there's stuff in this that matches what you do. There might be stuff in this that doesn't match what you do. What I'm going to go through today is I'm going to talk a little bit about what a fire regularisation is. I'm going to touch on the legislation because the legislation underpins everything. With every inspection, you generally, we generally do our desktop, then we do the site inspection. I'm going to throw up a few Part B issues that we have seen during fire regularisation inspections and talk a little bit about enforcement. Is fire safety important? Yes, fire safety is really important. This is probably one of the more recent big fire kills in South Africa, and it was only there at the end of August. So, 70 people killed in that fire. There was more than 200 people in the building. It can happen at any time. So the buildings must comply with Part B. There's 4 different fire certs. There's actually only 3. There's 4 mentioned under Part 3, but the 7-day notice is a commencement notice. So really that's just a commencement notice saying that we want to start in 7 days and we've already submitted our fire cert. So there's only really 3. There's the fire safety certificate, the normal one, the revised one where something changed and you need to get a revised certificate, and then the fire regularisation certificate, which is granted by the Building Control Authority in respect to the works on non-domestic buildings and apartment blocks which were commenced or completed without the necessary fire safety certification. Okay, so and with every fire safety cert, it's granted with conditions or refused. Just as a aid memor for me, obviously every building needs a DAC and every building should run through BCAR as well. And everybody knows this, but just to reiterate it, the legislation came in the 1st of June 1992 for fire safety certs. Fire regularizations came in 2009, but anything built before 1992 does not have a fire safety cert. So in reality, anything built before 1992 that needs a fire cert would have to go through the fire regularisation process. Just a quick note on the general legislation. Okay, so fire safety certs only look at Part B. So that's it, Part B only. We don't look at anything else as part of a fire safety cert. I threw up the section 21, which is the limitation of prosecution against the local authorities. Basically, you can't be prosecuted under the Building Control Act for the work you do as part of a building control authority. And it's never been tested in court, but I don't want to be sitting in front of Judge Judy arguing the case, but the legislation is written to protect us so that we can, assess fire safety applications. We can carry out the inspection and give our best advice with our best ability. The actual regs are drilling down into the regs in Part 3. This is what it says about fire regularizations, okay? And it says following an inspection. Every fire regularization needs an inspection. The legislation says it, following an inspection. The Building Control Authority can grant with or without conditions or refuse. It's the inspection. And when the Building Control legislation says authorised person, they mean the authorised person under Section 11. Okay, so that is the authorised person that carries out. You have to be authorised under Section 11. The regularisation certificate granted on this part basically says, in the opinion, which is a term that used to be here before BCAR, in the opinion of the Building Control Authority, the works will comply with Part B. Okay, so you're saying that the design is assessed normally, by the competent building control people, and then you carry out an inspection. And in the opinion of the building control officer, the design and the works comply with Part B. If you book conditions on a fire regularisation, there's 4 months for the owner to comply. They have to comply within 4 months. If they don't comply within 4 months, the fire cert is no longer valid. Now that's quite stark, and it puts a lot of onus on the Building Control Authority. But every fire regularisation comes in with a statutory declaration, and the statutory declaration puts an awful lot of responsibility on the building owner. They solemnly swear that the documents and information are, as the building is constructed or the works carried out, and are true and fully in compliance with Part B. So they're saying that the drawings they gave you and the works that were carried out are in full compliance with Part B. They've sworn it. They've signed the statutory declaration. You're talking about Criminal Justice Act by falsely signing a statutory declaration. So you're into a whole new, it's the guards at that stage, They solemnly agree to allow you to do the inspection. So they can't refuse, If they refuse to do the inspection, it's a breach of building control and it's a breach of the Criminal Justice Act. Solemnly declare that they will abide by any conditions, whatever condition we put on it, and accept that the conditions that are put on it have to be complied with within 4 months, otherwise the certificate will no longer be valid. Okay, so the legislation is quite strong on this, and it does put an awful lot of onus on the builder and the owner. Like I said, fire regulations, like every fire safety certificate, only looks at B0 to B5 really, because there's bits in B0 as well. What should an application include? Now, as part of the desktop assessment, there is information that will come into you, and the legislation says this is the information that must come into you. So it must be enough information to enable the Building Control Authority to assess whether said works will comply with Part B. Said works and said drawings will comply with Part B. So you should have, through the assessment process where the fire safety certificate has been assessed and deemed that the drawings and the compliance report is in compliance with Part B, you should have an awful lot of information. So when you come to do the desktop review, you have all this information. So you have the completed application for the fire safety certificate. So that gives you contact details. You have the plans and the drawings. You have the compliance report. So you have all the information which shows how this building complies with Part B. You have the particulars of the nature and extent of the proposed building or the proposed area or the proposed change of use. The fee, not important for us, like we have a job to do, it doesn't matter to us about the fee. By the way, the fee is 4 times the normal fire safety cert. And you have the person that carried out the assessment will or may have already put in conditions that will be applicable on this. So you have the conditions. So for Fingal County Council, Dublin Fire Brigade carry out the actual assessment. And if they come across, they will put conditions in based on their assessment. And if there's a lot of conditions in, you can be sure that they had concerns about that particular builder. So what do you get? The application form, you get the drawings, and the drawings show how it complies. You get the compliance report, very important document. The compliance report will match Part B or should match Part B. And you can see through the compliance report how this matches up with Part B. And you'll get the recommended conditions as part of the fire safety cert assessment. And they're the recommended conditions that you have already from whoever carried out the assessment. So you're going to site with a lot of information already. And if you have a look at this before you go to site, you have a lot of information in your head. So then you go to site, okay? The actual inspection. Now, I've made this very simple, but I'm going to talk about it in more detail. So really it's simple. It is simple. You contact the consultant, you arrange to go to site, meet the consultant on site, you carry out your inspection. Based on your inspection, you have 4 choices. You can tell the consultant or the builder or the assigned certifier or the owner, depending on who you meet, generally it's the assigned certifier or the consultant that did the fire safety cert, that they need to fix anything that you find on site and that you'll come back again. And that will mean, extensions of time. It will mean, second visit, third visit. It's laborious. It is the way we do it in Fingal a lot of the time because whether it's because we don't trust them or we just, generally if there's small works to be done, just get the works done. We'll come back and check it again. The second thing is the building is perfect. Everything matches the drawings. Everything seems to comply with Part B. Happy days. Grant with the fire safety conditions with the conditions that the person who assessed the fire safety cert put in. Just grant with those. Third one, we could grant with the assessed fire safety conditions and any other conditions that came from our site inspection. So, you know, the door didn't have intermissing, or, you know, we had a question mark about, you know, a certification on a particular product. You know, we can build that into the conditions. You know, we can say that all doors must comply with Part B, and they have 4 months to get that right. And then we can carry out the inspection on that basis, another inspection. And refuse. So obviously, if we refuse, we refuse. If it's not compliant and there's no way to get it compliant, it'll be a refusal. So the actual inspection, like I said, have your data, do your desktop review, have your drawings, have your compliance report. Bring a camera, simple, bring a camera. Most, like Mairead said, most people have tablets, my guys have tablets. So most people have tablets, the camera is already built into it. You might have to request documentation during an inspection. For example, if the drawings don't show where the smoke detectors are meant to be, you know, give us this commissioning cert for your fire detection and smoke alarm. Simple as that. You could ask that during the inspection. We're entitled under Section 11 to ask for any documentation to show compliance. Keep a record. Obviously, keep notes as you're going through. Specialist equipment, you shouldn't need specialist equipment, you know, unless you're going to get them to turn on the emergency lighting and check the luminance of that. But you shouldn't need special, and if you do need special equipment, it should be supplied by the consultant. If you need to get a ladder to go up in to see something, it should be supplied. PPE, and as Mairead said, you know, we need to be seen on the ground. Here's Shane wearing the building control vest, marked with building control, Fingal County Council on the front. I did an interview about 2 years ago, and I had an architectural technologist on the other side of the table who was working in the business for 30 years and said that he never saw a building control inspector on site. And I was shocked. And they probably were on site. They were probably on lots of his sites, but nobody knew we were the building control officer. So I would highly recommend get a vest that's marked. It brings professionalism into it. It brings it up that level. I always bring the red book with me. I know sometimes, you know, very often they would laugh when I walk in with the red book, but when the row breaks out, I give them the red book and say, show me how that complies. When do you terminate an inspection? Well, if the works aren't done, you know, you can finish the inspection and find all the works that are not done, or if you walk in the door and the very first thing is works non-compliant, you can walk straight out that door and say, get it right. You know, the consultant hasn't visited the site. You know, the builder told them it was all finished, and they took the builder's word. No show, consultant doesn't turn up. You know, that's awkward enough. Whether that's refusing you entry or not, I don't know, but generally it's a mistake. The building is unsafe. Obviously, don't go into a building that's unsafe. Okay, the actual inspection. What do you come across or what do you look at? Fire doors, big one. Always a big one, always trouble. Particularly in the older buildings. Very difficult with the older buildings. But look for the basics, you know. Make sure it's not lockable. Direction of swing, intermittent. Make sure the intermittent strip is there, and the smoke seal, if it needs a smoke seal as well. Self-closer device, is it working? You know, there's a door that actually worked. The only mess inside is Dublin Fire Brigade carrying stuff on their boots when they went in. It works. Fire doors work really, really well. There's a fire door that's not going to work unless you have the key, you know, which is not a very good fire door. What are you looking for? And it's kind of small there, but, you know, you're looking for the intermittent strips. Ideally, you know, and really all fire doors should be stamped, you know, and you can either have that stamp there or sometimes they have the little tags on top. And in a new building, if you don't have a fire door that's stamped, there's something wrong. Fire detection and alarm system, emergency lighting, sprinklers. You know, if it's on the drawings, of course, you know, you can, if it's on the drawing and it matches what's on the drawing, happy days, tick it off. If it's not on the drawings, you know, how do you know it's in compliance? Ask for the commissioning cert. All three of these need a commissioning cert. Fire detection and alarm system, emergency lighting and sprinklers all need a commissioning cert. So I just threw in a few pictures there. Escape routes and staircases, okay? So the routes need to match the technical, the travel distance. You know, the route doesn't match the travel distances. You know, if it's an extra 2 meters long, it may no longer be in compliance. Widths need to match what's in the compliance report and what's signed off. The routes need to be clear, you know, like it's always a bad sign if an escape route is full of crap, you know, and you're carrying out an inspection on you know, as a building control authority. Final exit, is the final exit exactly where it's meant to be? Is there the right number of final exits? Escape route protection, you know, AOVs, OVs, fire dampers. Like I remember going to a creche and, you know, the OV was, you know, wasn't in the stairwell. In fact, there was no window in the stairwell. So there was nowhere for the smoke to vent out. So, you know, AOVs, there's an AOV, that's its purpose. A fire damper, it will shut down, it protects the protected corridor when a fire starts. There's just a smoke vent. B2, probably not an awful lot to see on site. You know, it's really to do with the surface spread of flames. It's really to do, can the frame ignite the surface and move along the surface? We have come across buildings that had timber paneling on the escape route, you know. First thing straight away, show us, prove that that's a class 0 rating. Prove it, you know. It's the first request we'll do. B3, structure, you know, elements of structure, you know, is it a 60-minute, is it a 30-minute? Very hard to tell. Cavity, or fire stopping, you can see it. You should be able to see it. Cavity bars, impossible to see. Mechanical ventilation. So obviously the compartment there is not working. But this is what I like. It's marked off. There's a fire collar on the pipe. It's signed off by a competent person to say that this is installed correctly. Lovely. When you see that, you just breathe a sigh of relief. Same here, all signed off by somebody who says this is installed correctly. It's just a breath of fresh air when you see things like that. Here we have a 60-minute wall, and the owner of this building, this is his office, he wanted to see the workers on the floor, so he insisted that they put in a normal window. And the science certifier said, well, the client wanted it. Like, there's no longer a 60-minute wall. He had to take out the window and put back in a 60-minute wall. And you get that far more than you should. The client wanted it. Hang on a second, it has to comply. Tell the client that it won't comply. No, they let the building control authority tell the client it won't comply. And that's not on, that's just playing a game. Here it was a dodgy building, we were a bit worried about it. The cavity did not go the whole way up. So basically the wall stopped there and there was a clear run right through the attic. So obviously this building was generating a lot of concern for us. B4, it's, you know, mainly distant to the neighboring building. You know, it's spectacular when B4 goes wrong, but not something that we should really pick up on in an inspection. There shouldn't be anything wrong in an inspection unless it's too close to the neighboring building and doesn't comply with what was in the fire cert. And then B5, this comes up quite a bit, you know, the fire mains, the risers, vehicle access, firefighter access, and then remember B5 has the 3 little unusuals in there as well. And if they're in the building, they need to be addressed. You know, Dublin Fire Brigade aren't going to tank us if they can't get down to actually put out the fire. And then here's a hydrant. The marker's there, the hydrant's been buried. So the new surface went in and they never uncovered the hydrant. They're simple things, you know, but you know, when we're doing their inspection, they're things that we come across. The concerns with the fire regs. There is a concern out there that fire regs are being used in lieu of CCCs, in lieu of completion certs. You know, there should be no reason now for fire regulations. There should be no reason. Like the 1992 was when the legislation was brought in for fire safety certs. We're a long way after 1992, 31 years. And still we're doing fire regulations. The only fire regulations we should be doing are the ones pre-1992. And in all fairness, I think, you know, really maybe there should be, you know, a year or two given for the remaining ones that are pre-1992 and then scrap fire regulations. There's far too many of them being submitted. Like, how did they get that far? You know, maybe there is undercurrents, maybe there is drivers, like maybe it is cheaper, maybe insurance companies are happy with a fire regularization, even though it hasn't gone through the BCAR process. I don't know, but it's not a good practice. It's not something, it's something that may be out there. There is still fire regs coming in every year. Here's Fingal. So you can see, you know, we're getting the guts of 20 a year. How are we getting 20 fire regs every year? Like, how is that possible? And they're not old buildings, they're all fairly new buildings. It shouldn't be happening. Maybe insurance are driving it. Maybe it's, you know, we won't give insurance unless you have a fire cert. Maybe they didn't bother with the fire cert when they're building a building, the insurance won't cover it, so now they have to get a fire regularization cert. Maybe it encourages bad practice. You can build it whatever way you want, we'll just regularize it afterwards, you know? Maybe that's coming into the game. Maybe there's comfort in the Building Control Authority signing off, you know? The Building Control Authority carries out an inspection, you know? So Building Authority is sending in resources. Imagine if we only did fire reg certs. You know, Fingal would have probably 250 fire reg certs a year. The resources required to inspect all of those and then repeat inspections would be colossal. And how much can be assessed in a single inspection? Like, we're going in, it's an opinion of compliance. We're going in after it. There's very little we can see, and shockingly, and certainly the building control team of Fingal do often find an awful lot wrong. And these are meant to be checked by the consultant. These are meant to be signed off. They signed a statutory declaration saying that this building complies with Part B, and we go in and 8 times out of 10 there's something wrong. And that shouldn't be the case. Just the fire regs, yeah, the fire regularization cert only looks at the fire regs. Now, if any of my team are in there and they spot a Part M non-compliance or something like that, well, then that's a Section 11. If we've still within the 5 years, it's a Section 11 and shows how you're going to comply with Part M. But the fire is only to do with the fire regs. I did mention this, so older buildings, pre-1992 buildings don't have a fire cert. So yes, it makes sense. A fire regularization might be the only way they can get a fire cert if they need it for insurance. And then modern methods of construction, it's new, it's really interesting. I think, you know, we can see real potential in it, but, you know, we're, as building control authorities, are learning about it all the time, and I think we're doing good. But I just feel, and certainly from the site experiences, from the inspectors being on the ground and the engineers being on the ground, the expertise is not out there. That's where the expertise needs to be. The builders need to be competent in modern methods construction, not the building control authority. We cannot be the trainers. And I mentioned this at the beginning, why do we still have fire regularization? You know, if you follow the law, you don't need fire regularization, because it's an offense to start works without a fire safety cert. It's an offense. So how do we get to where we need a fire regularization? The only time you can start work without a fire safety cert is a 7-day notice. And in a 7-day notice, you've already submitted a normal or revised fire safety cert. If you don't comply with the conditions, it's not a valid fire safety cert. If you lie on a statutory declaration, it's a breach, it's an offence on the Criminal Justice Act. So you've even gone beyond the Building Control Act. And it says in the legislation, you cannot open, operate or occupy without a granted fire safety cert. And, you know, the amount of fire reg inspections we do where the building is buzzing, you know, it's, you know, you just wonder, you know, how much adherence to the legislation they're actually giving. On enforcement, what actions do you have? Straight away, and I probably should have done these the other way around, if you don't have a fire safety cert, you're not complying with the building control regulations, so straight away you can go to the court. Also, if you don't have a fire safety cert, in all likelihood you haven't demonstrated compliance with Part B, and probably are not in compliance with Part B. So that opens the door for an enforcement notice under the Building Control Act as well. So you could hit with 2 non-compliances here. The purpose of fire safety cert, everybody knows the purpose. It's to show and make sure the buildings are compliant with Part B. We don't want a big fire in this country. We don't want another big fire in this country. Final thought, and this is the last slide. So for the actual people in building control who are doing the inspections, don't go climbing into really weird places or any awkward places. you're there as the building control officer. Your safety is the most important concern for the building control authority. If there's something that needs to be inspected at a very high level, tell the consultant to organise it and you'll come back. Don't go inspecting a building that doesn't look very safe. You know, I think you should be looking for a certificate of compliance with Part A for this building. Maybe it's an earthquake zone and the building bounces as the earthquake happens there. And then last of all, if you're carrying out an inspection and there's a big rowdy crowd there and you're feeling a bit uncomfortable, don't do the inspection. You know, you can walk away. You don't have to do the inspection. All right. Now that's a whistle-stop tour. I tried to create the slides that maybe afterwards when they're sent around, people can use them to see legislation, inspection, typical things. So hopefully that's of some use to you. Thank you.